Let go of me. You're destroying my property. Her wrist twisted under Officer Rivera's grip as her laptop crashed to the cabin floor. The sickening crack of carbon fiber against metal silenced the entire aircraft. Passengers stared in stunned horror. Flight attendant Jessica Rodriguez smirked from the galley. Gate supervisor Miguel Santos folded his arms like a judge delivering a final sentence. To them, she was just another problem passenger who needed to be put in her place. A disruptive woman in a hoodie causing trouble over a seat. Nothing more than an inconvenience to be handled, processed, and forgotten. But what none of them knew, what only you, the viewer, know, is that the woman they were dragging down the aisle wasn't powerless at all. She was their $5 billion lifeline, the architect of their future, the invisible hand that controlled their destiny. And with every step they forced her to take, every second of humiliation they inflicted, they walked themselves closer to total ruin. In exactly 52 minutes, that broken laptop would trigger the collapse of a $20 billion airline empire. The cracked screen wasn't just damaged property. It was a ticking time bomb that would detonate across global financial markets before most Americans finished their morning coffee. The woman they were removing. She wasn't just any passenger. She was Dr. Vanessa Clark, CEO of Atlas Capital Partners, the same Atlas Capital that owned 8% of Continental Dynamics stock, the same Atlas Capital that had just signed a $5 billion merger deal that would save Continental from bankruptcy, the same Atlas Capital that could destroy them all with a single phone call. Before we dive into this story of ultimate corporate karma, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if this moment of injustice hits you the way it should, smash that subscribe button and give this video a like. Stories like this need to be heard. Now let's rewind to how this moment of reckoning began. Let's go back to JFK Terminal 4, Gate 42, where Prejudice Power and $5 billion were about to collide in the most spectacular corporate disaster in modern aviation history. Because sometimes when you mess with the wrong passenger, you don't just lose a customer. You lose everything. The air in Terminal 4 of JFK was thick with the smell of stale coffee and the collective anxiety of 100 delayed flights. Dr. Vanessa Clark leaned her head against a concrete support pillar, the rough paint a stark contrast to the plush leather of the boardroom she had just left 3 hours ago. She was exhausted. Not just tired, bone-weary, drained down to her core, running on fumes and pure determination. For the last 72 hours, she had been locked in the most intense negotiation of her career. A marathon of spreadsheets, legal documents, regulatory filings, and high-stakes corporate chess. As the CEO and founder of Atlas Capital Partners, she was worth $8 billion. She commanded one of the most powerful private equity firms on the East Coast, and she had just pulled off the impossible. The deal was done. Signed, sealed, and legally binding, Atlas Capital had successfully orchestrated a $5 billion leveraged buyout of SkyTech Airways, a smaller but innovative airline with cutting-edge technology and routes that legacy carriers desperately needed. The plan was elegant in its complexity. SkyTech would be merged with Continental Dynamics, a struggling legacy carrier that had been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. Continental had the infrastructure, the landing slots, the brand recognition. SkyTech had the innovation, the fuel efficiency, the customer satisfaction ratings. Together, they would create the largest, most advanced airline in North America. This wasn't just big business. This was transformative. Continental Dynamics was circling the drain, burning through cash reserves, facing potential bankruptcy within 18 months. This merger wouldn't just save Continental. It would revolutionize the entire industry. And it was finally, mercifully, completely finished. All Vanessa wanted now was to go home to her house in the Hollywood Hills, pour herself a glass of wine, and sleep for 14 straight hours. She had given her private jet crew the week off, expecting these negotiations to drag through the weekend like they usually did. The sudden resolution at 6 p.m. on a Thursday evening had caught everyone off guard, including her. That left her flying commercial for the first time in 2 years. She'd managed to book the last available seat on Continental Dynamics Flight 892 to Los Angeles. Premium economy seat 14A, a window seat that would get her home by midnight, Pacific time. Vanessa didn't look like a woman who commanded a $90 billion equity fund. She wore black joggers that were soft as butter, a simple gray hoodie from her alma mater, MIT, and designer sneakers built for comfort rather than show. Her natural hair was pulled back into an elegant low bun. She had learned long ago that anonymity was a luxury most billionaires never experienced. When you looked like money, people treated you differently. They wanted things from you. They performed for you. They lied to you. Today, that anonymity would become a liability. The gate area was chaos. Flight 892 was delayed by 2 hours due to a late-arriving crew from Atlanta. The frustration was palpable. Business travelers paced frantically, checking phones and muttering about missed meetings. Families with small children looked exhausted. College students slumped in chairs, resigned to another delay. Miguel Santos, the gate supervisor, was getting visibly agitated. He was 46 years old, with graying temples and a sour expression that seemed permanently etched into his features. His name tag read, Miguel, Gate Supervisor, but the title felt hollow. Miguel had been with Continental Dynamics for 15 years. 15 years of watching other people get promoted while he remained stuck behind the same podium, dealing with the same frustrated passengers, earning the same mediocre salary. He'd applied for management positions 7 times. 7 rejections. He'd watched younger employees, better-dressed employees who looked like the passengers in first class climb the corporate ladder past him. It had left him bitter, resentful, and angry at a world that seemed to reward appearance over experience. "We will board by groups," Miguel snapped into the microphone, his voice cutting through the terminal noise. "Do not crowd the podium. Do not ask me when we're boarding. I will call your group when it's time." When they finally called Group 3, Vanessa shuffled forward with her backpack slung over one shoulder. She moved slowly, deliberately, conserving energy for the 5-hour flight ahead. As she reached the podium, Miguel snatched her boarding pass with unnecessary force. He looked at the pass, then at her, then back at the pass. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Premium cabin?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. "You're in 14A. "Yes," Vanessa replied, her voice tired but polite. "Premium economy window seat." Miguel squinted at her like she'd just told him she was the Queen of England. He took in her appearance, the hoodie, the joggers, the lack of jewelry or designer handbags. In his mind, premium passengers looked a certain way. They carried themselves with visible wealth. They dressed to impress. This woman looked like she'd just rolled out of bed. "Funny," Miguel said loud enough for other passengers to hear. "You don't look like a premium passenger." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Vanessa felt them hit her chest like a physical blow. The microaggression was so blatant, so unnecessary, so deliberately cruel that it took her breath away. She could have destroyed him. Right there, right then, with a single phone call. She could have shown him the executive platinum diamond card sitting in her wallet. She could have mentioned her name, her company, the fact that her signature was worth $5 billion to the very airline he worked for. But she was so tired. So completely drained from 3 days of corporate warfare that she didn't have the energy to fight another battle. "I just want to go home," she said quietly, her voice flat and emotionless. "May I have my boarding pass back?" Miguel grunted and handed it back deliberately, brushing her fingers with his own in a gesture of casual disrespect. Whatever he muttered. "Have a nice flight." As Vanessa walked down the jet bridge toward the aircraft, she felt a familiar burning sensation in her chest. It was the sting of everyday racism, casual and cruel and completely unnecessary. It didn't matter that she'd been on the cover of Forbes magazine 3 months ago. It didn't matter that her personal net worth exceeded the GDP of small countries. To Miguel, she was just a black woman in a hoodie who didn't look like she belonged. She had no idea that in less than an hour, Miguel's casual bigotry would cost Continental Dynamics $5 billion and trigger the largest corporate collapse in aviation history. She stepped onto the aircraft, greeted by a flight attendant who looked as stressed and overwhelmed as everyone else that evening. The woman's name tag read, Jessica Rodriguez. Jessica gave Vanessa a plastic smile that didn't reach her eyes, pointed vaguely toward the cabin, then immediately turned back to her colleague to complain about the delayed catering truck. Vanessa found her seat, 14A, and settled in by the window. She stowed her backpack in the overhead bin, pulled out a thick financial report from the Atlas Capital acquisition team, and closed her eyes for a moment, trying to find some peace in the chaos. The deal was done. The hard part was over. In 5 hours, she'd be home. Or so she thought. The boarding process continued around her, a symphony of frustrated voices crying babies, and the constant ding of the overhead bin warning system. Passengers argued over overhead space. Flight attendants made half-hearted announcements that contradicted each other. Vanessa kept her eyes closed, focusing on her breathing, trying to center herself for the journey ahead. She'd learned meditation techniques during her Harvard MBA program, breathing exercises that helped her stay calm during tense negotiations. She just needed to get through the next 5 hours. Then she could rest. Then she could process what she'd accomplished. Then she could start planning the future of the most powerful airline in North America. She had no way of knowing that her peaceful flight home was about to become a nightmare that would destroy careers, collapse a corporation, and change her life forever. The plane was nearly full when it happened. "Excuse me." "You're in my seat." Vanessa opened her eyes slowly. A man was standing in the aisle, glaring down at her with undisguised hostility. He appeared to be in his early 50s, wearing a wrinkled navy suit that had seen better days and carrying the overwhelming scent of duty-free cologne. His face was flushed red, whether from alcohol or anger, Vanessa couldn't tell. His eyes were small and mean, and his mouth was twisted into an expression of entitled outrage. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said, sitting up straighter in her seat. "My seat," the man said, not as a request, but as a command. His voice carried the tone of someone accustomed to getting his way through sheer force of personality. "14A. You're in it. Get up." Vanessa, who had spent the last 3 days managing roomfuls of hostile executives and billion-dollar egos, instinctively shifted into diplomatic mode. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her boarding pass. "I have 14A, she said calmly, showing him the pass. "Perhaps you're in 14C. The aisle seat." The man's face grew redder. Let's call him Harrison, because that's exactly the kind of name that fit his entitled demeanor. Harrison had been drinking at the airport bar for 2 hours, nursing his resentment about the flight delay and everything else that was wrong with his life. Harrison worked in pharmaceutical sales, a job that required constant travel and constant rejection. He was 48 years old, recently divorced, and facing the slow realization that his career had plateaued permanently. The premium economy seat was a rare splurge paid for by his company, and he'd been looking forward to it all day. Seeing a black woman in what he considered his seat triggered something primal in Harrison's alcohol-clouded brain. "I am 14A. Harrison snapped his face, now crimson with rage. He waved his own boarding pass in the air, but not close enough for Vanessa to actually read it. "Now, move." "Sir, I'm sure we can sort this out," Vanessa replied, maintaining her professional composure. "My pass clearly says 14A. Could you please check yours again?" Harrison puffed up his chest like an angry bird. "Are you calling me stupid? Are you saying I can't read my own boarding pass? I know my own seat, flight attendant," he bellowed, waving his arm dramatically. "Flight attendant." Jessica Rodriguez, who had been dealing with passenger complaints for the past hour, bustled over with an expression of barely controlled annoyance. At 32, Jessica had been a flight attendant for 8 years, and she was tired of dealing with difficult passengers. She'd started her shift at 5 a.m. in Miami, worked a flight to New York, and now faced another 5 hours to Los Angeles. Her feet hurt. Her patience was gone, and she just wanted this flight to take off so she could go home to her apartment in Queens. "What's the problem here?" Jessica asked, her voice sharp with irritation. "This woman is in my seat," Harrison declared, pointing an accusatory finger at Vanessa. 14A. And she's refusing to move. Jessica didn't even look at Vanessa's boarding pass. She glanced at Harrison, noting his business attire and aggressive posture, then looked at the empty aisle seat. 14B and the empty window seat. 14C. In her mind, the math was simple. Important-looking businessman versus woman in casual clothes. The woman was clearly in the wrong. "Ma'am," Jessica said, turning her exasperation on Vanessa. "You're holding up the entire boarding process. You need to move to your correct seat." Vanessa held up her boarding pass, keeping her voice calm and professional. "My name is Dr. Vanessa Clark. My seat assignment is 14A. This is my boarding pass. Could you please verify this gentleman's seat assignment?" The words Dr. Vanessa Clark meant nothing to Jessica. She'd never heard of Atlas Capital Partners or $5 billion mergers. She only saw a woman in a hoodie causing problems. Jessica snatched the boarding pass from Vanessa's hand with unnecessary force. She glanced at it quickly, then looked at Harrison's pass, which he flashed without letting her study it carefully. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Jessica's face as she read Vanessa's pass, clearly showing 14A. But Harrison was standing there, red-faced and angry, and she'd already committed to his side of the story. "Ma'am," Jessica said, her voice taking on a sickly sweet, condescending tone. "It seems there's been a mix-up with the computer system. Your pass shows 14C. This gentleman has 14A. Vanessa's blood ran cold. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate lie. "No," Vanessa said, her voice losing its diplomatic tiredness and gaining a steel edge. "That is absolutely incorrect. My boarding pass clearly states 14A. I am not moving. Please get your supervisor or gate agent to scan both passes and verify the seat assignments." Jessica's eyes narrowed. The polite, tired woman in the hoodie was suddenly gone, replaced by someone giving orders in a tone that brooked no argument. Jessica didn't like being told what to do, especially not by passengers who didn't know their place. "Ma'am, I am not going to argue with you," Jessica said, her voice rising loud enough for other passengers to notice. "You are causing a disturbance and holding up this flight. You either move to 14C or you will be removed from this aircraft." Other passengers were watching now. Phones were emerging from pockets, though not yet recording. People were shifting in their seats, sensing drama. Alex Martinez, a 24-year-old marketing coordinator in jeans and a hoodie, was sitting 3 rows back in 14D. He'd been watching the confrontation with growing unease. Something about it felt wrong, felt familiar in a way that made his stomach turn. Alex had grown up in East LA, the son of immigrants who'd cleaned office buildings to put him through college. He recognized the tone in Jessica's voice, the assumption in Harrison's posture. He'd seen this script before. Quietly, Alex pulled out his phone and opened the camera app. Near the galley, Elena Vasquez, a senior operations coordinator in Continental's Los Angeles regional office, was observing the confrontation with professional concern. At 28, Elena had worked for Continental for 6 years, and she'd seen situations like this escalate quickly. She couldn't hear every word, but she could read the body language, the dismissive gestures, the growing aggression, the way Jessica had positioned herself as Harrison's ally without investigating the actual facts. Elena discreetly pulled out her Continental-issued tablet and began documenting the incident. "I am in the seat assigned to me," Vanessa stated, her voice low and dangerous. "I am a paying passenger and you are making a false claim based on incomplete information. I will not be moved from my assigned seat based on your error." Harrison, sensing Jessica's support, piled on with theatrical outrage. "She's being aggressive. I don't feel safe. She threatened me." Jessica seized on the accusation like a lifeline. "That's it. You've now threatened another passenger. You are officially a safety risk." She turned and spoke into her intercom phone with practiced authority. "Gate 42. This is Jessica on Flight 892. I need security at the aircraft. I have a non-compliant passenger who has threatened other passengers and is refusing to follow crew instructions." Vanessa stared at Jessica in complete disbelief. The speed of the escalation was breathtaking. In less than 3 minutes, she'd gone from being a premium passenger to a security threat based on completely fabricated accusations. "This is absurd," Vanessa said, pulling out her iPhone. "I am going to record this interaction for my own protection." "Oh no, you're not?" Jessica snapped, reaching for the phone. "Recording crew members is a federal offense." Vanessa pulled the phone back quickly. "Do not touch me. Do not put your hands on me." "She put her hands on me," Jessica shrieked, jumping backward as if she'd been electrocuted. "Help, security! She assaulted me." The performance was Academy Award worthy. Jessica stumbled backward, grabbing the arm of a seat for support, her face a mask of shocked terror. To anyone not watching closely, it looked like Vanessa had physically attacked her. Harrison stepped back with a satisfied smirk, enjoying the show. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted without having to lift a finger. Alex Martinez, still recording discreetly, whispered to his camera, "This is insane." She didn't touch her. This lady didn't touch anyone. The cabin door opened with a metallic clang, and Miguel Santos stepped onto the aircraft, followed by 2 uniformed airport police officers. Officer Carlos Rivera was a 10-year veteran of the Port Authority Police Department. At 41, he was tired, overworked, and dealing with his 3rd disruptive passenger call of the day. His partner, Officer Mike Thompson, was younger and more nervous but equally exhausted. Neither officer asked questions. They saw the situation through the lens that Jessica had carefully constructed a hysterical flight attendant claiming assault a concerned passenger who looked like a victim, and a black woman in casual clothes holding a phone. The narrative had been written for them before they walked through the door. "Ma'am," Officer Rivera said, his voice a low rumble of authority. "You need to gather your belongings and come with us, now." "Officer, I have done nothing wrong," Vanessa replied, trying to project the authority she was accustomed to wielding in corporate boardrooms. "This flight attendant is lying about what happened. I am in my assigned seat. Here is my boarding pass. All I'm asking is that someone scan it to verify my seat assignment." "We're not scanning anything," Rivera said, his patience already exhausted. "You've been ordered off this aircraft by the flight crew. That's final under federal aviation regulations. Let's go." "I will not," Vanessa stated firmly. "I am not being removed for a crime I did not commit. I am Dr. Vanessa Clark, CEO of Atlas Capital Partners. I need to speak to the captain of this flight immediately." The name meant nothing to them. Officer Thompson stepped forward, looking uncomfortable but following his partner's lead. "Doctor who?" Rivera growled, his voice thick with sarcasm. "I don't care if you're Dr. Seuss. You're getting off this plane either on your own 2 feet or in handcuffs. Your choice." He reached for Vanessa's left arm. "Do not put your hands on me," Vanessa said sharply, flinching away from his touch. That was all the justification Rivera needed. "She's resisting," he announced to his partner. Rivera grabbed Vanessa's left arm, twisting it behind her back. Officer Thompson, looking increasingly uncomfortable but following procedure, grabbed her right arm. Harrison had retreated to the galley area, watching the confrontation with obvious satisfaction. He'd gotten his seat, his moment of power, his small victory over someone who'd dared to challenge him. Passengers throughout the cabin were now filming openly. Alex Martinez was live streaming on X, his viewer count climbing rapidly as word spread across social media. "This is happening right now on Continental Dynamics Flight 892. Alex whispered to his camera. "They're physically removing a woman from her own seat." "This is crazy! This is assault!" Vanessa cried out as the officers yanked her from her seat. "You are assaulting me for the crime of sitting in my assigned seat." Her backpack was still in the overhead bin. As they dragged her into the aisle, her foot caught on the strap of a small carry-on bag she'd placed under the seat in front of her. The bag tipped over, spilling its contents across the cabin floor. Her keys clattered against the metal seat tracks. A leather-bound notebook skidded under someone's feet. and her company-issued laptop, a sleek carbon fiber machine worth $3,000, tumbled out and crashed onto the floor. The laptop skittered across the aisle and slammed into the base of a seat. The screen spider-webbed with a sickening crunch that echoed through the suddenly silent cabin. "My laptop," Vanessa screamed. "Stop, you're destroying my property." That laptop contained the only signed digital copy of the $5 billion term sheet. The backup was stored on Atlas Capital's secure servers in New York, but this was the primary copy digitally signed by all parties containing the final negotiated terms and conditions. "Leave it," Rivera commanded Thompson. "She's not getting anything. Let's go." "That is my property," Vanessa shouted as they dragged her past the broken laptop. "You have destroyed my property." This is theft. Neither officer cared about property damage. They had their orders remove the disruptive passenger. Everything else was secondary. They dragged her down the aisle as every passenger watched in stunned silence. Some filmed with obvious horror. Others looked away, uncomfortable with witnessing such a public humiliation. A few nodded in approval, satisfied that the problem was being handled. Vanessa felt the weight of every stare, every judgment, every assumption about who she was and what she deserved. She was no longer Dr. Clark, CEO of one of the most powerful financial firms in America. She was a spectacle, a problem, a dangerous black woman being put in her place. They hustled her down the jet bridge, which felt cold and empty after the chaos of the cabin. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everything look sickly and surreal. When they reached the gate area, Miguel was waiting with his arms crossed, wearing an expression of smug satisfaction. "Told you she was trouble," Miguel muttered to Jessica, who had followed them off the plane. They didn't take Vanessa to a quiet office or a private area where incidents like this were normally handled. Instead, they marched her to a small, glass-walled detention room right at the gate in full view of everyone in the terminal. The room was designed for exactly this purpose: public humiliation. Maximum visibility. A warning to other passengers about what happened when you didn't follow the rules. They pushed Vanessa into a hard plastic chair and cuffed one of her hands to a metal bar attached to the table. "We're processing you for interfering with the operation of a commercial aircraft and assault on crew members," Officer Rivera announced. "You're banned from Continental Dynamics for life, and you're lucky we're not taking you to central booking." Through the glass walls, Miguel and Jessica stood watching like spectators at a zoo. Jessica was dabbing at her completely dry eyes with a tissue, performing grief for the gathering crowd of curious onlookers. Miguel just looked triumphant, satisfied that justice had been served. Vanessa sat there under the harsh fluorescent lights, her wrist already chafing against the cold steel of the handcuff. The exhaustion from 3 days of negotiations had been burned away entirely, replaced by something much more dangerous. Cold, pure, diamond-hard fury. She looked at her Apple Watch. 10:30 p.m. She looked through the glass at Jessica, who met her gaze and smiled. A small, vicious smile of complete victory. Vanessa smiled back, a smile that didn't touch her eyes, a smile that promised complete annihilation. She had one phone call coming. They thought she would call a lawyer, a public relations firm, maybe her assistant to arrange bail. They had no idea she was about to call in a nuclear strike that would obliterate everything they thought they knew about power. While Vanessa sat handcuffed in the glass detention room, something extraordinary was happening in the digital world. Alex Martinez's live stream on X had exploded beyond anything he could have imagined. "Holy shit, guys," Alex whispered into his phone as he walked through the terminal. "That was the most insane thing I've ever seen. They literally dragged this lady off the plane for sitting in her own seat." The viewer count was climbing exponentially. 1,000 viewers, 5,000, 15,000. The comments were flooding in faster than Alex could read them. "This is exactly what happened to my sister on United last month. I can't believe this is still happening in 2024. Where's her lawyer? Someone needs to help her. This is why I don't fly anymore. The racism is real. Alex had started the live stream on impulse, but now he realized he'd captured something significant. He'd documented an injustice in real time, and the internet was responding with fury. Within minutes, the hashtag #JusticeForVanessa began trending. Someone had screenshotted Alex's stream and posted it to Reddit's public freakout forum. The post exploded with thousands of upvotes and comments. A TikTok user named Social Justice Warrior reposted the video with dramatic music and text overlays highlighting the key moments woman shows boarding pass. Flight attendant lies about seat assignment, security called based on false accusations. The TikTok video reached 100,000 views in 30 minutes. On Instagram, travel influencer Wanderlust Wilson shared the story to her 2.3 million followers with the caption, "This is why Black women avoid traveling alone. The constant assumption that we don't belong." Elena Vasquez, the Continental Operations Coordinator who had witnessed the entire confrontation, was having an internal crisis. She'd worked for the airline for 6 years. She believed in the company, believed in providing good customer service, believed that situations like this were rare exceptions. But what she'd just witnessed wasn't an exception. It was a pattern she'd seen before, just never so blatantly documented. Elena had been discreetly recording the incident on her company tablet for potential internal review. Continental had policies about documenting passenger incidents, especially ones involving potential discrimination complaints. Now watching Vanessa sitting alone in that glass room like an animal in a cage, Elena made a decision that would change her career forever. She opened her personal X account and posted a thread. "I work for Continental Air. I just watched my colleagues lie fabricate assault charges and physically remove a passenger from her assigned seat. This woman did nothing wrong. She showed her boarding pass, she remained calm. She was assaulted by our security team for the crime of existing while Black. This is not the airline I thought I worked for." Elena attached the video she'd recorded on her tablet, clearly showing Jessica lying about the seat assignments and Harrison's obvious aggression. The thread exploded. Elena's follower count went from 847 to over 50,000 in 2 hours as people retweeted her eyewitness account. But the real viral moment came from an unexpected source. Destiny Williams was a 22-year-old nursing student from Atlanta who'd been on the plane sitting in row 18. She'd filmed the entire confrontation on her phone, capturing angles that Alex's stream had missed. Destiny posted her video to TikTok with a simple caption, "They really thought they could do this to her." Watch what happens next. The video showed the broken laptop, Vanessa's scream of, "That's my property," and most damning of all, Jessica's completely fabricated stumble backward when claiming assault. The video went mega viral. 5 million views in 4 hours, shares across every platform, celebrity retweets, news outlets picking up the story. Dr. Vanessa Clark began trending worldwide. But here's what none of the viral videos captured: the phone call. Vanessa sat in the detention room, her left hand cuffed to the metal table, watching the chaos outside through the glass walls. More airport police had arrived to control the growing crowd of onlookers and media representatives. She could see Miguel and Jessica huddled with airport security, no doubt crafting their official statements about the dangerous passenger they'd heroically removed. Officer Rivera returned to the detention room with a standard form on a clipboard. "You get 1 phone call," he announced. "Make it count." Vanessa didn't hesitate. She pulled out her iPhone and dialed a number she knew by heart. The phone rang once. Marcus Rivera, Vanessa's chief of staff, was at a rooftop bar in Manhattan, finally enjoying his first drink in 3 days. The Atlas Capital team had been working around the clock on the Continental merger, and he'd just raised a glass of expensive whiskey to celebrate the deal's completion. When his phone buzzed with the Helios caller ID, he dropped the glass. Helios was Vanessa's personal emergency line. It was never used except for genuine crises, corporate disasters, medical emergencies, market crashes. Marcus answered before the second ring. "Vanessa, are you okay?" Did something happen to the plane? Vanessa's voice came through the phone with terrifying calm. Too calm. It was the voice she used when she was about to liquidate a failing investment or fire an entire management team. Marcus, I'm at JFK Airport. I've been detained by airport police. I'm currently handcuffed to a table in a holding room at Gate 42, Terminal 4. Marcus was already out of the bar, flagging down a taxi on the street. Detained for what? I'll have our legal team there in 20 minutes. No, Vanessa cut him off. Listen to me very carefully. No lawyers, not yet. I have one phone call and I need you to execute specific instructions immediately. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. When Vanessa spoke in that tone, fortunes were won and lost. First, I need you to locate the archived press release we drafted for the Continental deal. The negative scenario. The one where the merger fails. Marcus was confused. The deal failure release, Vanessa, that's buried in our crisis communications folder. Why would we need that? The deal is done. Because you're going to activate it, Vanessa said quietly. In about 30 minutes, you're going to send that press release to every major financial news outlet in North America. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for 10 seconds. Vanessa, what does that mean? Activate what? It means. The Continental merger is dead effective immediately. I want you to call Robert Martinez's office right now. I don't care if he's asleep in surgery or on his honeymoon. You get him on a conference call with the entire Continental Board of Directors. Marcus stopped walking. Cars honked around him as he stood frozen on a Manhattan sidewalk. It's almost 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. I don't care if it's Christmas morning, Vanessa replied. You tell them that, Doctor. Vanessa Clark has invoked Article 15B of the merger agreement. Article 15B, the catastrophe clause. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Article 15B was a nuclear option buried deep in the merger contract. It was designed for genuinely unthinkable scenarios. Market collapse declaration of war, terrorist attacks, or a complete breakdown of partner confidence due to material misrepresentation. It was a corporate doomsday weapon that had never been used in Atlas Capital's history. My God, Vanessa. What happened? Vanessa's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every word cut like a blade. Continental Dynamics employees racially profiled me at their gate. They lied about my seat assignment. They had me physically removed from my assigned seat. They destroyed my laptop containing the signed merger documents. They had me arrested and handcuffed based on completely fabricated charges. Marcus stopped breathing. What the deal is dead, Marcus. But that's not all. I want you to initiate Red Protocol immediately. Red Protocol. Marcus's legs nearly gave out. Red Protocol was the complete divestiture of Atlas Capital's position in Continental Dynamics. They owned 8% of the company, worth approximately $1.1 billion at current market prices. Dumping that much stock at once would trigger algorithmic selling, crash the stock price, and potentially bankrupt the company. Vanessa, that's our entire Continental holding. That's over $1 billion. We'll flood the market. The stock will collapse. We'll lose $200 million just on the sale price. I'm aware of the mathematics, Marcus, she said calmly. Consider it a termination fee. When the market opens at 9:30 tomorrow morning, I want every single share of Continental Dynamics sold. Every single share. Marcus was hyperventilating. Jesus Christ. Okay. I'm on it. After you do that, I want you to alert the PR team. The press release goes out at 9:31 a.m., exactly 1 minute after the market open. Title it, Atlas Capital divests from Continental Dynamics, cites critical operational failures and cultural liability concerns. And Marcus, yes, find out who the CEO of SkyTech Airways is. Get him on my calendar for first thing tomorrow morning. We're going to have a very different conversation about the future of aviation. Click. Meanwhile, at Continental Dynamics headquarters in Chicago, CEO Robert Martinez was celebrating in his corner office with a bottle of Dom Perignon that cost more than most people's monthly salary. To us, he toasted his wife Elena, who joined him for the celebration. to the merger, to saving this company. His phone buzzed. Marcus Rivera calling on the emergency executive line. Robert ignored it. It was nearly 11 p.m. Whatever it was could wait until morning. The phone rang again. Then again. "Honey, you should answer that," Elena said. "Nobody calls the emergency line unless it's important." Robert sighed and picked up the phone. "This better be good, Sarah," he said to his executive assistant. "Sir, this is Marcus Rivera from Atlas Capital. I need to speak with you immediately." Robert's blood pressure spiked. Marcus Rivera was Vanessa Clark's chief of staff. He only called for nuclear-level emergencies. "Marcus, it's 11 p.m. Can't this wait until Dr. Clark has invoked Article 15B of the merger agreement?" Marcus interrupted. "The deal is terminated effective immediately." The champagne glass slipped from Robert's hand and shattered on his office floor. "That's impossible. That's a joke. The deal is signed. We're celebrating. There's more, Mr. Martinez. Dr. Clark is also initiating complete divestiture of Atlas Capital's equity position in Continental Dynamics. That's $1.1 billion hitting the market at 9:30 tomorrow morning." Robert's vision went white around the edges. "That will destroy us. Our stock will be worthless. Dr. Clark is aware of the potential consequences," Marcus said coldly. "What the hell happened? Where is she?" "Get her on the phone. Dr. Clark is currently unavailable. She's in police custody at JFK Airport. Your employees had her arrested." The words didn't make sense. Robert's brain couldn't process them. Arrested? For what? For sitting in her assigned seat while black, apparently. The phone went dead. Robert Martinez, CEO of a $20 billion airline, stood in his office surrounded by broken glass and champagne, watching his entire world collapse in real time. He didn't know the details of what had happened. He didn't need to. The most important woman in his company's future was at that moment sitting in custody at his own airline's gate. "Get me David Rodriguez," he screamed at his assistant over the intercom. "Get me the head of airport security at JFK. Get me the mayor of New York. Find out what happened and fix it." But it was already too late. The viral videos had millions of views. The hashtags were trending worldwide. And in 7 hours, when the market opened, Atlas Capital would execute the most devastating corporate revenge in modern business history. David Rodriguez, the JFK station manager for Continental Dynamics, was exactly 7 minutes from the end of what had already been a brutal double shift, when his phone exploded with a call from CEO Robert Martinez's personal line. David had worked for Continental for 12 years, rising from baggage handler to shift supervisor to his current position managing Terminal 4 operations. In all that time, he'd never received a direct call from anyone above regional management, let alone the CEO himself. Mr. Rodriguez came, Robert Martinez's voice distorted by panic and static. "What in God's name is happening at your station? You have Dr. Vanessa Clark in custody." David's mind went completely blank. "Sir, I'm sorry, who Dr. Vanessa Clark?" "I don't know any Dr. Clark. We did have an incident about an hour ago with a disruptive passenger on Flight 892, but she is not a disruptive passenger." "You idiot!" Martinez screamed so loudly that David had to hold the phone away from his ear. "She is our $5 billion partner. She is the merger. She is Atlas Capital. You fix this. You fix this right now, or I will personally fly to New York and fire every single person in that terminal." The words hit David like a freight train. Atlas Capital. The merger. $5 billion. He knew about the Continental SkyTech merger. Everyone in management had received the memo about the Atlas Capital partnership. It was the deal that would save the company, the deal that would secure everyone's jobs for the next decade. And they had just arrested their business partner. "Get down there right now," Martinez continued screaming. "Get her out of custody. Get her on a private jet. Kiss her feet. Beg for forgiveness. I don't care what you have to do. Save this deal. David sprinted from his office like his hair was on fire. He ran through the terminal, pushing past passengers, jumping over suitcases, his tie flying behind him like a banner of corporate panic. He knew about the incident at Gate 42. Miguel and Jessica had filed their standard reports about a non-compliant passenger who had to be removed for safety reasons. David had signed off on the paperwork without reading it closely the way he'd done hundreds of times before. It was just another difficult passenger, another problem to be processed and forgotten. Except this time, the difficult passenger controlled the future of his company. David skidded to a halt outside the glass detention room and saw her through the transparent walls. A black woman in a gray hoodie sitting calmly with one hand cuffed to the table. She was looking at her phone with her free hand, her face a mask of serene, terrifying composure. She didn't look angry. She didn't look upset. She looked like someone who was making a very important phone call that would change everything. David fumbled for his master keys, hands shaking as he unlocked the door. Dr. Clark. Dr. Vanessa Clark, he wheezed, stumbling into the small room. I'm David Rodriguez. I'm the station manager here. Vanessa looked up slowly. Her eyes were like black ice, cold and perfectly clear. There has been a monumental misunderstanding, David continued, gasping for breath. A terrible, terrible mistake. He rushed to the table and used his master key to unlock the handcuff around Vanessa's wrist. Oh my God, are you hurt? Did they hurt you? Please, let me help you. Vanessa rubbed her wrist slowly, not taking her eyes off David's face. Where are my belongings? Yes, of course. David ran back outside and grabbed Vanessa's backpack from the security desk. He also retrieved the broken laptop from Miguel, who was standing nearby looking increasingly pale as he began to understand the magnitude of what had happened. David returned to the detention room and set everything on the table. When he saw the destroyed laptop computer, his stomach turned to liquid. Dr. Clark, I am so sorry. We will replace this immediately. A new laptop, anything you need. Please. He was begging now, literally wringing his hands. Mr. Martinez is flying here personally. He's devastated by this incident. This is not who we are as a company. This is the fault of a few rogue employees who will be terminated immediately. Vanessa finally spoke. Her gaze was so penetrating that David felt like an insect under a microscope. A few rogue employees, Mr. Rodriguez. Her voice was quiet, controlled, but every word carried the weight of impending doom. Your gate supervisor, Miguel, racially profiled me at the boarding podium. Your flight attendant, Jessica, lied about my seat assignment and fabricated assault charges when I corrected her mistake. Your security team physically dragged me from my paid seat and destroyed my property, and you signed off on all of it without asking a single question or reviewing any evidence. David's face went white. It was true. He had signed Miguel's incident report without reading it carefully. Standard procedure for what seemed like another routine passenger removal. I was busy with other issues. I trusted my team's judgment. I should have investigated more thoroughly. This isn't a rogue employee problem, Mr. Rodriguez. This is a cultural problem. Your employees felt empowered to humiliate a passenger based solely on her appearance, and your management structure automatically supported them. Vanessa stood up slowly, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. We will fire them, David said desperately. Miguel and Jessica are gone, effective immediately. We'll review our training procedures. We'll implement new policies. Please, Dr. Clark, what can we do to save the deal? A man in an expensive black suit appeared at the door. Behind him stood two private security guards wearing subtle earpieces and tactical equipment. Dr. Clark, your car is ready? The lawyer said calmly. Vanessa walked toward the door, leaving the broken laptop on the table like evidence at a crime scene. Please, David begged, physically blocking her path. Dr. Clark, the merger, the company 35,000 jobs. What can we do to save this? Vanessa paused and looked back at the station manager. He was a man whose life was unraveling in real time, who had just realized that his casual negligence had cost his company $5 billion. The deal, she said, as if just remembering it. The deal is dead, Mr. Rodriguez. Atlas Capital is divesting its entire position in Continental Dynamics at market open tomorrow morning. David physically staggered. No. How much? How many shares? $1.1 billion in sell orders. That will trigger algorithmic trading programs designed to front-run institutional dumps. Your stock will collapse before most Americans have their morning coffee. That will destroy us. Our stock will be worthless. Yes, Vanessa said simply. Dr. Clark, please. The employees, the passengers, the pilots who depend on us. What about them? Vanessa's expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained diamond hard. You should have thought about that before your employees decided to drag me off a plane for the crime of existing while black. She walked past David toward the terminal exit. As for what you can do, she called back over her shoulder. You can find Miguel and Jessica. Tell them what their bigotry cost you. Tell them they didn't just lose their jobs. They destroyed 35,000 other jobs. And then you can update your resume, Mr. Rodriguez. I suspect Robert Martinez is going to need a scapegoat for this disaster, and you're the most qualified candidate available. Vanessa walked out of Terminal 4, flanked by her security team, leaving David Rodriguez standing in the detention room with a growing void in his stomach. The financial apocalypse was coming, and it would arrive at exactly 9:30 a.m. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Robert Martinez was in his corner office war room surrounded by computer monitors showing Continental's stock price, financial news feeds, and crisis management protocols. He'd been making phone calls for 2 hours. To board members, to crisis management firms, to every contact he had in the financial media. The story was already out there, spreading across social media like wildfire. His phone rang. Marcus Rivera from Atlas Capital. Marcus, thank God. I've been trying to reach Dr. Clark. We need to fix this immediately. Whatever happened, we can make it right. Mr. Martinez, Dr. Inez. Clark asked me to inform you that she is unavailable for further discussion. Atlas Capital's decision is final. Marcus, please. We've worked together for months on this deal. We're partners. One incident with rogue employees doesn't represent our entire company. Mr. Martinez, I was instructed to direct all future communications to our legal department. Have a good evening. The line went dead. Robert stared at his phone in disbelief. A 2-year relationship destroyed by a single phone call. A $5 billion deal evaporated by corporate arrogance and employee racism. His assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Martinez, the board is calling an emergency meeting for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. What do they want to discuss? Your employment, sir? Robert Martinez, CEO of a $20 billion airline, sat alone in his office, watching everything he'd built crumble around him. Outside his windows, Chicago glittered in the darkness, unaware that by morning one of the city's largest employers would be in free fall. At JFK Airport, Miguel Santos and Jessica Rodriguez were in David Rodriguez's office, no longer smug or triumphant. They sat in uncomfortable chairs while David paced behind his desk like a caged animal. Do you understand what you've done? David asked, his voice barely controlled. Do you have any idea who that woman was? Miguel's confident facade had completely collapsed. We thought she was just another difficult passenger. She didn't look like she belonged in premium economy. She didn't look like she belonged. David exploded. She is Dr. Vanessa Clark. She is the CEO of Atlas Capital Partners. She controls $8 billion in private equity. She was our business partner. Jessica was crying now, her earlier performance replaced by genuine terror. How were we supposed to know she was wearing a hoodie and sneakers? She looked like anyone else. That's exactly the problem, David screamed. You made assumptions based on her appearance. You racially profiled our most important customer. He threw a folder across the desk. You are both terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You will never work in the aviation industry again. Miguel stood up slowly. This isn't fair. We were following standard procedures. We couldn't have known. Standard procedures. David laughed bitterly. Your standard procedures just cost this company $5 billion and 35,000 jobs. You destroyed the laptop containing signed merger documents. You had her arrested on false charges. You humiliated her in front of hundreds of passengers and millions of social media viewers. By tomorrow morning, Continental Dynamics will be in bankruptcy proceedings, and it will be directly because of your prejudice and incompetence. Jessica looked up through her tears. What about our families? Our mortgages? What are we supposed to do? David stared at them with cold disgust. You should have thought about that before you decided to drag a billionaire off a plane. Security guards appeared at the office door. Escort them out. They are permanently banned from all Continental facilities. As Miguel and Jessica were led away in shame, David collapsed into his chair. His phone was ringing constantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and corporate executives. In a few hours, the market would open, and Atlas Capital would execute the most devastating corporate revenge in aviation history. The reckoning had only just begun. At exactly 4 a.m. Eastern Time, the pre-market trading session opened for global investors. Continental Dynamics stock ticker symbol CD was stable at $47.82 per share. Financial analysts across the world were predicting a massive surge when regular trading began, expecting the Atlas Capital merger announcement to drive the stock up by 20 to 30%. The financial press was uniformly bullish. Continental Dynamics set to soar, read the Wall Street Journal headline. Merger Monday could see CD hit $60, proclaimed CNBC's pre-market report. Nobody knew what was coming. At 9:28 a.m., Marcus Rivera sat in Atlas Capital's trading floor in Manhattan, surrounded by computer monitors and direct market access terminals. His hands were shaking as he entered the final commands for what would become known as Red Protocol. The order was staggering in its scope: sell 52.3 million shares of Continental Dynamics at market price. No limits, no conditions. Dump everything immediately at whatever price the market would bear. At current stock prices, the position was worth approximately $1.1 billion. But Marcus knew that an institutional dump of this magnitude would trigger a cascade of algorithmic selling that would destroy the stock price within minutes. Are you absolutely sure about this? Asked Jennifer Walsh, Atlas Capital's head of execution trading. Marcus thought about Vanessa sitting handcuffed in that glass room, humiliated and assaulted by the very people they were trying to do business with. Execute, he said. At 9:30 a.m., precisely, the New York Stock Exchange opening bell rang across financial markets worldwide. For the first minute and 27 seconds, Continental Dynamics traded normally. The stock actually rose to $48.15 as early investors bought in anticipation of merger news. Then the Atlas Capital sell order hit the market like a financial tsunami. High-frequency trading algorithms detected the massive institutional sell order within 3 seconds. Automated systems designed to front-run large transactions immediately began dumping CD stock to get ahead of the crash. Within 30 seconds, $14 billion in CD stock had been sold by algorithmic trading systems, pension funds, and institutional investors trying to escape the collapse. At 9:47 a.m., trading in Continental Dynamics was automatically halted. The stock had fallen from $48.15 to $16.23, a drop of 67% in less than 2 minutes. Across the financial world, alarms were screaming. Risk management systems were triggering automatic sell orders. The ticker for CD was flashing red on every trading screen from New York to London to Tokyo. And then at 9:31 a.m. exactly, the press release hit every major financial news service simultaneously. Atlas Capital Partners terminates Continental Dynamics. Partnership cites grave operational failures and cultural liability concerns. The release was corporate legal devastation written with surgical precision. Following a comprehensive review of operational and cultural practices, Atlas Capital Partners has terminated its $5.2 billion financing agreement with Continental Dynamics, effective immediately. This decision follows the identification of deeply embedded operational failures, significant cultural liabilities, and a complete loss of confidence in CD's executive management and internal oversight mechanisms. Atlas Capital has divested 100% of its equity position in Continental Dynamics and considers the relationship irreparably damaged. Financial journalists who had been writing glowing merger stories 30 minutes earlier scrambled to understand what had gone wrong. The phrase cultural liabilities was particularly ominous. In corporate speak, that meant scandal discrimination or worse. Within minutes, investigative reporters were digging through social media looking for the source of Atlas Capital's sudden confidence loss. They found it immediately. The videos from JFK were everywhere. Alex Martinez's live stream had been viewed 8.3 million times. Destiny Williams' TikTok showing the laptop destruction had reached 12 million views. Elena Vasquez's insider account from a Continental employee had been retweeted 847,000 times. The hashtags Dr. Vanessa Clark and Continental Scandal were trending in 43 countries. By 10 a.m., every major news outlet was running the story. Billionaire CEO dragged off. Own partner's plane, read CNN's breaking news banner. Atlas Capital destroys. Airline, after racist incident, reported the Financial Times. In Chicago, Robert Martinez was in the Continental Dynamics executive war room watching his company's stock price in real time as it collapsed toward zero. The board of directors had gathered for an emergency session that was really an execution. 12 of the most powerful people in American aviation sat around a polished conference table, watching decades of corporate value evaporate on the wall-mounted screens. Robert said Judith Morrison, the board's finance committee chair, her voice cold as winter. "Explain to us how you allowed a customer service dispute to destroy a $5 billion merger and bankrupt this company." Robert's face was gray-aged 10 years in 10 hours. It was 2 employees, a gate agent and a flight attendant. They made a terrible mistake. We fired them immediately. "You fired them after they cost us everything," snapped board member Thomas Bradford. "We just watched our shareholders lose $14 billion because your people couldn't tell the difference between a disruptive passenger and our most important business partner." Judith leaned forward. "We've reviewed the airport security footage, Robert. We've seen the social media videos. We watched them destroy her laptop. We watched them drag her off the plane like a criminal. This wasn't a customer service failure. This was criminal negligence on a scale that defies comprehension." Robert tried to mount a defense. "We can fix this. I'll fly to Los Angeles. I'll apologize personally. We can offer compensation, new policies, whatever she wants." "She doesn't want anything from us," Robert Thomas said. "She wants us destroyed, and she has the power to do it." Judith stood up slowly. "The board has made its decision. Robert, you are terminated as CEO effective immediately. Security is waiting outside to escort you to your office to collect personal items. You are forbidden from making any statements to the press or contacting any Continental employees. You are personally liable for this disaster under the terms of your executive compensation agreement. Expect to hear from our attorneys about clawback provisions for your golden parachute." Robert Martinez, who had run Continental Dynamics for 8 years, sat in stunned silence as his career ended with a gavel bang. Security guards entered the conference room. "Mr. Martinez, please come with us." As Robert was escorted from the boardroom, where he'd made billion-dollar decisions for nearly a decade, Judith turned to the remaining board members. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to discuss Chapter 11 proceedings. Continental Dynamics is effectively insolvent as of this morning, but the corporate devastation was just beginning. The Atlas Capital divestiture had triggered a cascade of institutional selling that went far beyond Continental Dynamics. The company's credit rating was downgraded to junk status by Moody's and Standard & Poor's within hours. Bondholders dumped CD debt instruments, driving borrowing costs to unsustainable levels. Continental's banking partners began calling in credit lines and demanding additional collateral that the company could no longer provide. Aircraft leasing companies started preparing repossession notices for planes that Continental could no longer afford to operate. The ripple effects spread throughout the aviation industry. Continental's bankruptcy would eliminate a major competitor, but it would also disrupt route networks, strand passengers, and eliminate 35,000 jobs across the country. Union representatives gathered in emergency sessions trying to protect their members' pensions and benefits from the corporate collapse. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, and ground crew workers watched their retirement savings evaporate along with Continental's stock price. But while Continental Dynamics was dying, something extraordinary was happening on the other side of the country. At 11 a.m. Pacific Time, Dr. Vanessa Clark sat in her office at Atlas Capital's Los Angeles headquarters, dressed in a sharp black power suit that commanded respect from across the room. She looked nothing like the exhausted woman in a hoodie who had been dragged off a plane 12 hours earlier. Her office occupied the entire corner of the 38th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of downtown LA. The walls were decorated with awards from Harvard Business School photographs with world leaders and framed covers of financial magazines featuring her success stories. On her desk sat a new laptop identical to the one that had been destroyed at JFK. Her assistant had worked through the night to restore all her files from Atlas Capital's secure servers. Alex Rivera, the young CEO of SkyTech Airways, appeared on her wall-mounted video screen calling from his office in Seattle. Alex looked like he hadn't slept, which was probably true. "Doctor," Clark Alex said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and stress. "I don't know what to say. The Continental deal is dead. GAD is imploding. We're ruined. SkyTech was completely dependent on that merger for expansion capital." Alex ran his hands through his hair, looking every bit like a 32-year-old entrepreneur watching his company collapse. "Without the Continental partnership, we don't have the financial backing to scale. We have great technology, efficient operations, excellent customer satisfaction ratings, but we can't compete with the major carriers without significant capital investment." Vanessa leaned back in her leather chair, her expression unreadable. "Alex, that $5 billion in financing is still sitting in Atlas Capital's Aviation Investment Fund." Alex's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Continental's failure to perform doesn't change my fundamental investment thesis about the future of aviation. SkyTech has everything. Continental pretended to have innovation efficiency, customer service, and most importantly, respect for human dignity." Alex was speechless. "I'm not interested in acquiring SkyTech anymore, Alex. I'm interested in making you the most well-funded airline in American history." This was the twist that no one saw coming. The $5 billion that was supposed to save Continental was about to create Continental's replacement. "We're not going to rescue an old, broken, prejudiced company." Vanessa continued, her voice gaining energy. "We're going to build a new one from the ground up, one built on respect, innovation, and my bottom line." Alex's shock was transforming into excitement. "Dr. Clark, are you offering us the full $5 billion as direct investment? I'm offering you more than that. I'm offering you revenge." Vanessa stood up and walked to her windows, looking out at the city below. "We're going to take Continental's landing slots when they default on the lease payments. We're going to hire their best pilots and engineers as they flee the bankruptcy proceedings. We're going to acquire their most profitable routes at fire sale prices. That $5 billion was supposed to save a company that couldn't see past the color of my skin. Instead, we're going to use it to bury them and build something better." Alex was grinning now, the despair replaced by aggressive optimism. "Dr. Clark, this is 100 times better than the Continental deal. We won't be a subsidiary of a dying legacy carrier. We'll be the future of aviation." "Exactly. SkyTech will become the largest, most advanced, most respected airline in North America. And we're going to do it by proving that character matters more than prejudice." "Yes," Alex whispered, then louder. "Yes, absolutely." "Dr. Clark, you are incredible." Vanessa smiled a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time in 18 hours. "I'm not incredible, Alex. I'm just a businesswoman who doesn't like being assaulted by her business partners. Now, let's get to work. We have an airline to build and another one to bury." As news of the SkyTech investment spread through financial markets, aviation analysts began to understand the full scope of what had happened. This wasn't just corporate revenge, it was corporate replacement. Atlas Capital hadn't just destroyed Continental Dynamics. They had simultaneously created Continental's successor, better funded and better managed than the original had ever been. The financial press began calling it the most spectacular example of corporate karma in business history. One moment of prejudice at an airport gate had shifted billions of dollars and reshaped an entire industry. But the story wasn't over yet. The individual consequences were still coming. 2 years later, JFK Airport Terminal 4 looked like a completely different world. The dingy, worn-out Continental Dynamics infrastructure was gone, replaced by SkyTech Airways' gleaming modern terminals. Where Gate 42 had once featured flickering fluorescent lights and hard plastic chairs, there were now warm LED lighting systems that mimicked natural daylight and comfortable lounge seating with built-in charging ports for all passengers, not just premium customers. The old Continental carpet, stained with years of spilled coffee and neglect, had been replaced with polished terrazzo flooring that reflected the light beautifully. Digital displays showed real-time flight information in multiple languages. The gate areas felt more like upscale hotel lobbies than airport waiting rooms. Dr. Vanessa Clark stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of Gate 42 watching SkyTech's newest aircraft being serviced on the tarmac. She was dressed, as always, in her preferred travel uniform, a simple black hoodie, comfortable joggers, and sneakers designed for long flights. She was working on her laptop, putting the finishing touches on Atlas Capital's newest venture, a $12 billion green energy investment fund that would revolutionize sustainable aviation fuel. A young man in an impeccably tailored SkyTech Airways management uniform approached her hesitantly. His movements were respectful, almost reverent, and his face showed a mixture of recognition and nervous excitement. "Dr. Clark," he said quietly. Vanessa looked up from her laptop, her expression polite and professional. "Yes, my name is Thomas Nguyen," he said, his voice slightly unsteady. "I'm the station manager for Terminal 4. I wanted to introduce myself and thank you. Thank you for what Thomas took a deep breath, gathering his courage. 2 years ago, I was working right here at this gate. I was employed by Continental Dynamics as a baggage handler. I was on duty the night when everything happened." Vanessa's expression softened slightly. She remembered that night in vivid detail, but she also remembered the human cost of Continental's collapse. "I was one of the 35,000 employees who lost their jobs when Continental went under." Thomas continued. "It was devastating. I had a mortgage of family responsibilities. I thought my career in aviation was over." "That must have been an incredibly difficult time for you," Vanessa replied, and her sympathy was genuine. "It was," Thomas nodded. "But that's not why I'm here. When SkyTech started hiring for the new terminal operations, I applied for any position available. I just needed work. The training program was completely different from anything I'd experienced at Continental. On the first day, our orientation manager spent 4 hours talking about what he called the Gate 42 incident. He used it as the foundation for everything SkyTech stands for. Vanessa hadn't known that her experience had become part of SkyTech's employee training. She felt a small smile touch her lips. "He told us that our sacred duty, our absolute mission, was to ensure that kind of treatment never happened in our airline." Thomas continued, his voice gaining confidence. "He said your motto had become company policy. Dignity is not a perk, it's the price of a ticket." I worked hard, Thomas said. I suggested improvements to baggage tracking systems. I proposed better customer service protocols. And management listened. They implemented my ideas. Last month, they promoted me to station manager of this terminal. Thomas gestured around the transformed space. I'm managing the same gate where I used to load luggage, where I watched my colleagues make the worst mistake in corporate history. His eyes were bright with emotion now. Dr. Clark, you didn't just build a new airline. You built a better one. You didn't just save my job. You gave me a career with a company that actually values human dignity. Vanessa was genuinely moved. This was the real victory, the lasting change that went beyond stock prices and corporate mergers. This was about building something better from the ashes of something broken. Thomas, she said, standing up and extending her hand. Thank you for telling me that. But you're wrong about one thing. I didn't build this. You did. You and everyone else who chose to make this place better than what came before. Thomas shook her hand, beaming with pride and gratitude. An announcement echoed through the terminal. We are now ready to begin boarding for SkyTech Flight 1 nonstop service to Los Angeles, departing from Gate 42. Oh, Thomas said, snapping back into professional mode. Dr. Clark, I have your boarding information right here. You're in Seat 1A, our flagship first-class suite. Please allow me to escort you aboard immediately. Vanessa looked down at her phone, checking her boarding pass. She had, as always, booked Seat 14A, a premium economy window seat, but the system had automatically upgraded her reservation, recognizing her name and status. She looked at the long line of passengers forming at the gate. Families with children, business travelers, young couples heading to California for vacation, regular people living their lives trusting SkyTech to get them safely to their destinations. Thank you, Thomas, Vanessa said, zipping up her backpack. That's very kind of you. But I think I'll board with my group. I'm Zone 3, I believe. Thomas looked confused. But Dr. Clark, you own the airline. Vanessa smiled, a warm, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. Today I'm just a passenger in 14A, and you know what? On this airline, every seat is treated with equal respect. She stepped into the Zone 3 boarding line right behind a young family struggling with a stroller and carry-on bags. She blended in seamlessly, just another traveler going home. But as she walked down the jet bridge toward the aircraft, Thomas and his entire gate crew watched her go. They didn't just see a passenger. They saw the woman who had been dragged off a plane in handcuffs and returned 2 years later as the architect of the most respected airline in the industry. She didn't need to cut the boarding line. She already owned the destination. As Vanessa settled into Seat 14A, the same seat type where her nightmare had begun, she reflected on the journey that had brought her back to this moment. The flight attendant, a professional young woman named Maria Santos, approached with genuine warmth. Dr. Clark, welcome aboard SkyTech Flight 1. Is there anything I can get you before takeoff? Just a safe flight home, Maria. Thank you. It's an honor to have you with us today, Maria said sincerely, then moved on to assist other passengers with the same level of attention and respect. As the plane pushed back from Gate 42, Vanessa looked out the window at the terminal that had been transformed by her refusal to accept injustice. The building itself was the same, but everything inside had changed. The aftermath of that night had been swift and complete. Robert Martinez had never recovered from his firing. The shareholder lawsuits had consumed his golden parachute and much of his personal wealth. The Harvard Business Review had published a 43-page case study titled The $5 billion Seat, a Study in Corporate Culture Failure, which was now required reading in business schools across the country. Robert had become a cautionary tale, a warning about what happened when prejudice infected corporate culture. He lived quietly in a suburb of Chicago, unemployable in the aviation industry, a ghost haunting the margins of business networking events. Miguel Santos had found work as a security guard at a shopping mall in Queens. His dream of advancement in the aviation industry had died the moment he decided that Vanessa didn't look like a premium passenger. He spent his days watching teenagers shoplift and wondering how his life had gone so wrong. Jessica Rodriguez worked at a food court in New Jersey serving fast food to customers who didn't know her name or her history. Sometimes she would see SkyTech Airways commercials on the terminal televisions featuring diverse, smiling flight attendants who looked proud of their jobs. She would turn away, unable to watch. Harrison, the passenger who had started the confrontation, had been identified from the passenger manifest after the incident became international news. His pharmaceutical company had fired him within hours, and he now sold insurance from a small office in New Jersey, his career permanently stalled by his moment of entitled aggression. But their individual fates were footnotes to a larger transformation. SkyTech Airways had grown into the most successful airline in North America, powered by Atlas Capital's investment and guided by principles of dignity and respect that had emerged from Vanessa's traumatic experience. The company's employee handbook opened with a simple statement: every passenger deserves respect, regardless of appearance, race, or perceived economic status. Our job is not to judge who belongs on our aircraft. Our job is to get everyone safely to their destination. SkyTech had implemented comprehensive bias training for all employees, not as corporate box checking, but as genuine cultural change. The airline tracked customer satisfaction metrics across demographic lines, ensuring that service quality was consistent regardless of passenger background. Most importantly, SkyTech had created opportunities for employees like Thomas and Gwen People, who had been displaced by Continental's collapse, but who brought experience and wisdom to a company building something better. As Flight 1 reached cruising altitude over the American heartland, Vanessa closed her laptop and looked around the cabin. The passengers were relaxed, comfortable, treated with dignity regardless of their seat assignment or appearance. An elderly black woman in the back of the plane was being served coffee by a flight attendant who smiled genuinely. A Hispanic family with young children was assisted with extra pillows and blankets without being asked. A young man in a hoodie and jeans, much like Vanessa had been wearing that night 2 years ago, was reading peacefully in his seat without anyone questioning his right to be there. This was the legacy she had built from a moment of injustice. Not revenge, but redemption. Not destruction for its own sake, but the creation of something better from the ruins of something broken. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus Rivera. SkyTech stock up another 12% today. You've officially created the most valuable airline in the world. Vanessa typed back, stock prices are just numbers. Culture is what lasts. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Vanessa reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been dragged off a plane in handcuffs, humiliated and assaulted for the crime of existing while black. Today, she was returning home on an airline that existed because she had refused to accept that treatment as normal or acceptable. Continental Dynamics wasn't just bankrupted by money. It was bankrupted by its own culture, by employees who felt empowered to humiliate passengers based on appearance, and by management that supported them without question. Miguel and Jessica had learned that prejudice carries a price tag they would be paying for the rest of their lives. Their moment of casual racism had cost them their careers, their dreams, and their futures. Dr. Vanessa Clark had proven that true power isn't about yelling loudest in a confrontation. It's about having the final word in the boardroom, the last move on the chessboard, the ability to build something better from the ashes of something broken. The airline that thought it could dismiss her had discovered that she could dismiss them. What started as a seat dispute had become a $20 billion lesson in the cost of disrespect. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere because of how you look, let this story remind you that sometimes karma doesn't just come back. It comes back with compound interest, compound growth, and the power to change everything. Because dignity isn't negotiable, respect isn't optional, and justice, when it finally arrives, transforms everything. It touches. What did you think of this incredible story of justice and transformation? Have you ever witnessed discrimination like this yourself? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of ultimate corporate karma moved you, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing true stories of justice, inspiration, and the power of standing up for what's right. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful response to injustice isn't anger, it's action.